Hello, and thank you for listening to Texas History for Kids. I'm your host, Michelle Gallegos, an educator, writer, history nerd, and novice investigator. Each week on the show, we will learn about interesting parts of Texas history, from battles and historical figures to the odd and enchanted. Hi guys, welcome back. We are on episode 4 with Texas History for Kids, and I'm so happy that you guys keep joining me. And I'm glad that you are listening today. Let's go ahead and dig right into today's episode. Have you been to a rodeo lately? Do you know what a rodeo is? Well, in Texas, we have rodeos all year long pretty much. Some are big and some are small. American-style professional rodeos include calf roping, steer roping, bareback riding, bull riding, barrel racing, and steer wrestling. Today's history is about one of the first steer wrestlers in Texas. Steer wrestling, also known as bulldogging a long time ago, is an event in the rodeo where a cowboy rides a horse while chasing a steer, or a male bull, guys, until he throws himself off the back of the steer and wrestles it to the ground. The cowboy's goal is to bring the steer to the ground by grabbing his horns and shaking him from side to side to get him off balance until the bull finally falls to the ground. The first person to ever do this was a man from Liberty Hill, Texas named William Pickett, or Bill Pickett as he liked to be called. He was born in 1870 in Travis County. His father was a former slave. His ancestors were said to be African American, Caucasian, and Cherokee Indian. He is considered one of the most famous African American cowboys in Texas history. He quit school when he was in 5th grade, which would make him about 10 or 11 years old. Can you imagine quitting school when you're 10 years old? It wasn't uncommon in those days. Mr. Bill Pickett became a ranch hand. A ranch hand is someone who is responsible for taking care of animals on a ranch. Bill's job was to take care of the Texas Longhorns. Do you know what a Texas Longhorn is? No, I'm not talking about the University of Texas Longhorns. I'm talking about those large bulls that have horns as long as a car. Yeah, those guys are real. You can see them on Texas ranches everywhere. Being a ranch hand is what began Bill's journey into what is known as bulldogging, or as we call it today, steer wrestling. He is credited for inventing this very famous rodeo sport that still goes on today. So regardless of the name, Bill was really good at bulldogging or steer wrestling. As a boy, he watched cowboys with trained bulldogs chase down bulls, which is how the bulldog also got his name, by the way. He watched the dog wrestle the bull to the ground so that the cowboys could round up the bull. Bill had seen this done many times before, and he figured he didn't need a dog to do it anymore. He knew that horses rode faster, and this would give him the momentum to jump on a steer with lots of force and grab the bull by his horns. So he tried it. Did you know that there's an expression still used today, take the bull by the horns? It means to handle a hard or difficult situation with confidence and face the problem at face value. I'd say Bill was definitely facing a difficult situation when he came into contact with that bull. And, of course, he needed to have the confidence to be able to take down the bull. As a ranch hand, he was used to training wild horses in a technique called horse breaking, where cowboys train a wild horse to become tame and rideable. Bill had watched the dogs take down the bulls as a kid all the time. Well, he became the first person to do this technique of bulldogging. And what a pro he was! Not only did he jump on the back of the bull and grab him by the horns, but he was also known to bite the bull on the lip, which then made the bull fall backwards. Bill's family moved to Taylor, Texas in 1888, when he was 18 years old. He married Maggie Turner, and the two raised their 9 children on a small farm in Taylor, Texas. Later, he and his 4 brothers started the Pickett Brothers Bronco Busters. Say that 3 times. And they also started the Rough Riders Association. They were very famous for telling everyone that their specialty was catching and taming wild cattle. We know that Bill was definitely good at that. Bill joined rodeos and fairs throughout Texas, Arizona, Wyoming, and Oklahoma throughout the years. He was soon a popular performer who toured around the world in the early 1900s and appeared in early movies. Sadly, because Bill was African American, he was often forced to claim that he was full-blooded Cherokee Indian so that he could perform at some of the rodeos. Otherwise, they wouldn't allow him to perform. In 1932, Bill was just 61 years old when he was kicked in the head by a horse while working at one of the ranches in Oklahoma. A few days later, he died of his injuries, and he was buried in Oklahoma at a place called Cowboy Hill Cemetery. How fitting is that for an old cowboy who seemed to love what he did? Being buried on a hill called Cowboy Hill? His legacy continues today, although steer wrestlers are no longer allowed to bite the lips of the bull. There is a statue of Bill Pickett at the Fort Worth Stockyards, and there's also one in his hometown of Taylor, Texas. In 1971, Bill Pickett was inducted into the Rodeo Hall of Fame of the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum. In 1989, he was inducted to the Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame. In 2021, a hill in Burnett County was even named after him. As you can see, Bill was a legendary man whose legacy continues long after he died. Almost 40 years after his death, he was still being inducted into different organizations. The Bill Pickett Invitational Rodeo will celebrate its 40th anniversary in 2024. For more details, check out BillPickettRodeo.com. There have actually been several books written about him as well, and I think I'll link those into the show notes. Well, today you learned about a cowboy who invented bulldogging, or steer wrestling as it's known today, whose legacy still continues on. So the next time you are at a rodeo watching a cowboy wrestle a bull, make sure you tell the person who's sitting next to you about the legendary William Bill Pickett. This week's question is, how would you describe Bill Pickett's character traits? How would you describe the type of person he was? Send an email to michellegallegos.author@gmail.com. If you or your child has received valuable information, as always, please share the show with other friends who might find it interesting. Are you an educator looking for a way to engage your students in more listening or reading comprehension skills? Did you know that most of my podcasts have a link to free resources for listeners? Since my podcast lasts 15 minutes or under, students can listen during waiting periods, and they're great activities for those fast finishers. Head on over to my website for all the free goodies, michellegallegos.com. Remember, yesterday is today's history.